So we have approximately 300 surface mine sites in the state. Our program was started in 1983, and so since that point in time we've reclaimed about a third of our sites, and so we've got a couple hundred sites left to go. It takes a long time to get one of these sites reclaimed, and it's quite an expensive project. So most people don't realize it, but Iowa actually has a pretty rich history in coal mining, going back all the way to the mid to late 1800s. Transcontinental Railroad went through Council Bluffs, and Iowa coal was being shipped out west. Production in Iowa peaked around 1917, and some of the literature that I've read indicated that at one time Iowa produced about the 5th most amount of coal in any state in the Union. So pretty significant. Everybody knows Iowa for producing corn, but actually prior to corn, coal might have been king in Iowa. The program is funded through federal dollars. It's pretty unique how this program does work, but for every ton of coal that's currently mined in the country, in the United States, there's a tax associated with that tonnage. And then those tax dollars come back to the states to help reclaim old coal mines. All the work that we're doing on our reclamation projects are on sites that were mined prior to 1977, before there was significant laws that required reclamation work. So anything that was mined after 1977 has already been reclaimed in the state. We're doing some of the older sites now.
There's a lot of small mines out there yet that need to be cleaned up. We need to control our runoff, either the soil loss or even the water that's coming out of there is not really the greatest. We'll get that fixed so that we have quality water going down our streams.
Most of these actually have other areas of land that's being farmed right adjacent to it, that actually drains into the mine site or through it. So sometimes it goes through streams that are sometimes clogged. You've got those other high wall elements out there and pools of water. So working with that landowner on the area adjacent to it, if we can talk with them about some other practices that would improve not only the sediment that comes off of those, but to improve infiltration so that you don't have as much runoff that's going off of that land through the mine site, down to the creek, down to the river, eventually to the Mississippi.
We have a lot of sites here around here that are basically just lying there and will until something's done. It's too much for one individual to take care of. When we first came on this site, I actually previewed the site, and we had a lot of colored water coming out, and we noticed the instant we got this thing capped off, that water went clear before we even have any vegetation on it. So definitely that water, that leachate and stuff that is coming out of these hills decreases immediately, and it's headed right for the river over here, so we understand why we're doing this. It definitely helps out the environment.
Iowa actually has a statewide plan that we use. First and foremost, the highest priority type projects that we're going to reclaim are those sites that present safety concerns. We have a lot of sites that have dangerous high walls and embankments, spoil piles, and pit ponds. These sites are going to receive a higher priority when it comes to reclamation.
This 86 acres right here, they mined coal on it from 1961 to 64 or 5. They were here 4 or 5 years. And there was original coal mining way in the north end, but they come clear south till they got to the high wall where it got real deep. And so that's the last mining that happened here to about 1965. All the rest of it was done many, many years before.
I guess, what went on back out there in the coal mines was Steve and his buddies always went hill climbing. It was kind of a recreation spot for him and his buddies, and that legacy went on to his sons and friends, and it's on to the grandsons. And of course, that was always fun to do hill climbing, and I, of course, was worried about that. Mom was always afraid of us staying away, wanted us to stay away from them ponds, because there were a couple of red ponds had red water from the sulfur in it, and there were a couple other nice green ponds. They looked appetizing for swimming, and Mom worried to death about us drowning in one of those ponds.
Well, the main objective that we typically do on our AML program is to mitigate priority features. And if we got a high wall or a dangerous pit pond or a steep spoil pile, we try to take care of those. That's our big objective. What makes this project unique, especially on the Durande West site, is that it's somewhat of a, I'll call a marriage between the conventional design, which is the conventional piece is behind me on this wetland bottom, and then that's kind of married to a natural regrade design, which is everything to the east of the site. So we're trying to bring two design philosophies together. The one philosophy is more of a conventional design where you use terraces and risers and terrace intakes to manage the storm water. The other philosophy for the natural regrade is a situation where you grade channels into the landscape and give water kind of what it wants. How much is engineering, how much is art? I would say it's going to be about 60% art and 40% engineering. Because if you don't have the creative mindset when you start, you're probably not going to have a creative solution. And it takes those creative solutions that make these reclamation projects successful and unique.
Just a few different agencies that we need to consult with before we can go further along in these projects, and need to get clearances from all those agencies as well. There's the Army Corps of Engineers, the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, the State Historical Preservation Office, and then the Office of Surface Mining, Reclamation, and Enforcement. We need to do wetland assessments, archaeological phase 1 studies. We need to consult with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. It's one of the first ones that we've had where we've had an active bald eagle's nest within 660 feet of our project boundary. With that, we had to get a special clearance from Fish and Wildlife Services to be able to work in that area. We restricted construction activities from January 15th till about a week and a half ago. We weren't able to work within about a 1 acre piece of the project until the eagles were fledged from the nest and were able to fly. So we'll actually monitor the site for 5 years after construction's complete. We'll do biannual inspections just to make sure the site's functioning properly, the way the design of the site is going. If there's any terrace blowouts or outlet structure failures.
As the project coordinator on this site, I have several different duties. I oftentimes think of it as being like a parent. There's times I have to get involved, there's times I don't, but I oversee and work with the landowners, I work with the contractors, I work with the design engineer, I work with local partners as well to take a project from the very beginning of unreclaimed all the way through to a reclaimed project. You know, the process of mining was very similar on all of the sites. They would take and pull off the overburden, they would get down to the layer of coal, they would harvest that, and then they would just leave the site as it was. On the surface, a lot of times they look alike, but every single site is different. We deal with the off-site water in the design phase. We have to deal with different size high walls, pit ponds. Everything, while they're similar in nature, they're completely different on every site. For me, I really enjoy working with the landowners. There's a lot of chance to meet people, hear their history, get to know what it was like when they bought the property or perhaps they were involved with mining. I really like that aspect, but every single day is different, and I think that's probably what I like the most is I get a chance to work with all these different people who all share a common goal, and that is reclamation when we're done.
It's amazing. I took my grandkids out there all the time before, and now after, they're just like, wow, this is really cool. It's all different. It looks different every time we go out there. And I took my sister-in-law, Alita and Dot, out there, and we went riding all the way to the back corner where the eagles are. And they just couldn't believe it, because Alita went out there a lot of times to walk, and it was not grown up in sticker bushes as bad when she was younger.
It does look a lot better. I guess I had never, on the 43 years that I was here, really had never walked over that whole entire space or been back there. I've been to certain spots of it, but now that it's all cleaned off, you can see clear to one end from each side, whatever, and I think, oh, wow. And when it was being reclaimed, or when they were working on it too, I go, wow, you know, that hole was totally different, and it does look nice.
I
really happy with watching the contractor work, and I think they're doing a great job, and I'm really looking forward to seeing over time how the grass comes in and watching the water work and seeing the design actually happen over the course of several years. So I'm really fortunate that we could possibly have some usable land here coming up. So thank you guys.
The program is set up to address hazardous features left behind by coal mining, and we do that in the process of the reclamation. But we also, I think our staff, we've got a team that we get somewhat attached to these sites, and we invest a lot of time, and so it goes beyond that we're interested to how that site might be managed afterwards, because the real success on a reclamation project begins when we're done and the landowner takes it into the future, because we've eliminated the hazards, we've stabilized the site, we've done all the things we can do, but the long-term care is what's going to be important. And I really am, we get attached to them, working with them, the local soil districts and stuff, and try to promote that as being really important.